Hello everybody, welcome to Mand 1234, the module called Mandarin Chinese for Beginners, brought to you by the fictional Funniversity of Bristol. So this is an introduction to the module and it's your pre-sessional learning in advance of lecture 1. So clearly this is a simulation for the purposes of our webinar, but please do play along. You are now a Mandarin Chinese student, so please use your module workbook to make some notes, learn this material properly in advance of our live session. Okay, simulation starting now. So to introduce myself then, hello, 大家好, hello everyone, 我是 Dr. Fei Fan Tang. I am Fei Fan Tang. I'm going to be your Mandarin teacher. So I've been learning Mandarin Chinese for around a year and a half, which clearly qualifies me to teach the subject at my own institute, the Fei Fan Fictional Funniversity of Bristol, to which I'm delighted to welcome you. I'm the module leader of Mand 1234 and I absolutely cannot wait to meet you in our live session. So a bit about myself then. I love learning languages. I used to speak French to a reasonable degree, don't really anymore. I love gardening. I'm currently learning to play the piano. In terms of things I find hard about studying, so I have Erlen syndrome, which is a visual sensitivity syndrome. So when I read black on white, it's very tricky. So you'll probably find that if I send you out information, it's probably got a coloured background. So if you want to change that background, then please go ahead. So that's me. Can't wait to meet you all. So in terms of an introduction to the module, you've got the module workbook, which should tell you a little bit about the module. It should tell you the staff and the teaching order. So I'm Fei Fan, and you'll note that I'm teaching in weeks 1, 3, 5, 7 and 9 of term. And here are the topics we'll be covering. So today's lesson will be all about counting. So our learning method throughout this module is going to be semi-flipped classroom. So that means that instead of you turning up to my lecture and me talking at you, well, no, that's a waste of time. Instead, we learn in 3 parts. What we're doing now is the pre-sessional work. So you'll learn or be introduced to the content, and this replaces the I talk at you part of the lecture. Now this is great because it means you'll have at least several days before our live session to become familiar with the content. So when you actually turn up to our live session, which will be our webinar, you'll be able to practice using the content with which you're already familiar. So it'll give us more time to do active learning and knowledge checking, and for you guys to ask questions as well. And then there's always going to be that little bit of post-session homework for you to do, as you would do normally. And I would offer you some drop-in sessions. I would have a discussion board on Blackboard or Moodle for you to ask questions, and then so you can keep practicing your work. And in this way, this would loop round. So after the post-session, this would feed back into the pre-session and next time's live session. So this is proven in terms of educational research to be a super effective method of teaching and learning. So I really hope you're going to enjoy it. So this is lecture 1. If you look in your workbook, so I'd suggest that you have your workbook open if you're going to use it electronically, or print it out if you've chosen to print it, whilst you go through this video. So we're on lecture 1, so you've got a space if you want to write down the term, week and date to keep track of your learning. And what you'll see is a list of learning outcomes. At the moment, all of the learning outcomes have a little red box next to them. Now, as you've done the learning outcomes, what you can do is you can delete those red boxes, and that will just leave a black tick. So if there's anything you're not sure about, leave the red box there, come to the live session and make sure you get that question answered. So by the end of today's pre-sessional video, you should be able to do the first 3 learning outcomes: to recognise the Chinese characters for the numbers 1 to 5, to be able to write the first 3 numbers using Chinese characters, and to pronounce correctly the numbers 1 to 5. These 2 learning outcomes we're going to save for the live session. And this will be your additional reading, which you can do at any time. So I hope that's nice and clear. So let's get started. So if you look in your workbook, what I've tried to do is produce a kind of template summary to help you to summarise your pre-sessional work. So it's this table that you should be able to fill in by the end of this video. So in terms of an introduction to Mandarin Chinese, so I'm not ever going to test you on this material, this is just simply for interest. Mandarin Chinese is spoken by 9 out of 10 Chinese people, so China is absolutely huge. If you look at the yellow kind of area on this map, here are all the people that mostly speak Mandarin. So that's over 900 million people just in China alone. And then you might be interested to know, perhaps you know this already, that Chinese is actually the most commonly spoken language on Earth. Almost 1 billion people speak Mandarin Chinese worldwide. So more than Spanish and more than English. And you can see here on this map, you've got native Chinese speaking countries, so kind of mostly China. But if you actually look at other parts of the world, there are literally millions of people speaking Chinese in other parts of the world. So even in the US, you'll even notice that the UK is shaded. So Chinese is a superb language to learn, and it's really, really important. So in terms of today's lesson, we are going to learn to count in Chinese, and it's your first ever lesson in Chinese. Some of you may speak Chinese, you may have had a go at learning Chinese before. I look forward to hearing about that in the lesson. But if you haven't, learning to count is going to help you to understand some of the features and some of the things you'll need to do if you want to progress on and learn Chinese. So learning Chinese has a couple of extra things compared to if you were learning something more like French or Spanish, which you may have learnt in school. We've got new words to learn. Vocabulary, that's the same in any language, isn't it? We'll need to learn to pronounce Chinese, to know what the rules are around pronunciation. Are there some sounds that Chinese people use that we don't use if we speak English? Yes, there are some sounds that we don't have in English equivalents of. We're going to need to know about the grammar. Grammar's dead easy in Chinese. It's brilliant. You'll love it. Now, the extra things that you might not be so familiar with, first of all, you probably know that Chinese has its own way of writing, which is called Hanzi, Chinese characters. So this is my name, Fei Fan, written in characters. So we're going to need to learn to write the numbers using the Chinese characters. We'll also need to know about a system called pinyin, which literally means sound spelling. It was invented in about the 1950s, and it's a way to use the Roman alphabet, so the alphabet that we use, A, B, C, D, to spell out the sounds of these Chinese characters, because otherwise we wouldn't really be able to write them very easily in English. So my name using pinyin is spelled like this, Fei Fan. So in terms of the numbers then, you'll need to do both of these things. You'll need to, well, all of these things. You'll need to learn the words for the numbers, how to pronounce them. We won't be doing any grammar today. You'll need to know how to write the numbers using English letters using pinyin, and also to recognise the characters. So it's a really nice introduction. So here are the first 3 characters for the numbers 1, 2 and 3 in Chinese. Can you have a guess as to which one is the number 1, which one's the number 2, and which one is the number 3? Right, so hopefully you got that right. So some Chinese characters look like what they are, not all of them. So look over here, this is a diagram from the website Chinesey, which is brilliant. This symbol here means tree, kind of looks like a tree. And if you stick 3 trees together in the same character, you make the word for forest. Brilliant. So look how easy this is. The Chinese number 1 is written as 1 line. The Chinese number 2 is written as 2 lines. The Chinese number 3 is written as 3 lines. Fantastic. How do we pronounce them? What are they called? Well, here in this column is the pinyin. This is the official method of actually spelling out these numbers. So if you wrote this word here, any Chinese person who knew pinyin would know exactly what you meant. So it's important to spell them correctly. So number 1 is pronounced yi, yi, yi. So the closest English pronunciation we have, I would say, is in the name Saeed. So what it isn't is a really emphasised y, like we would say you. You don't hear the y. It's not ye, that's incorrect. It's more like almost as if that y is missing and the emphasis on the ye. So if you said the name Saeed, ye, ye. All right, that's number 1. So this is how you write it. You can write this in your workbook now. Don't write the characters just yet. I need to tell you how to write them. So E is number 1. Number 2, we don't have an equivalent sound for in English. It's pronounced R, R, R. So some people think it's a little bit like how a pirate might sound. If you were reading a pirate story to a young child and you were going R, R, little bit like that. So it's not as we would say in English. If we were reading this, we might think it's and it's not really arm, R, R, it's kind of like your throat is narrowing a little bit. Any Arabic speakers tend to be good at this. You guys have sounds that are a little similar to this. R, R, R is how to say number 2. So E-R, E-R, 1, 2. Number 3 is easy. San, san. And it's pretty much just like sand, san, san, san. So E-R, san. Just try saying this with me. So we're going to say all 3 numbers. I'll say them and then you say them. E-R, san. Good, fantastic. So, oh, you can ignore this. I didn't notice this was on the slide. This was just me copying and pasting in some symbols to you. So just don't worry about that right there. All right, we've got the 3 numbers pronounced. So how do we write their characters? Because the characters are here, looks like they're pretty simple to write. Now, the thing about writing Chinese characters is there is what we call a stroke order. So you'll notice a couple of things about the way that Chinese characters are written. Chinese characters, when written with calligraphy using this kind of ink brush, just look absolutely beautiful. Look at the image a minute. Can you see the way that the paintbrush strokes, take this stroke here, start thin at this end and thick at this end? Look at this stroke. Look at this stroke as well. And you see it's slightly thicker at this end. This stroke in the distance is thinner at this end and much thicker towards this end. And this would give you clues that you have to write Chinese characters in a particular stroke order. So 1 stroke first, then the next stroke next. And also you have to write the strokes from either right to left, from up to down, very particular rules. So what you'll notice when you look at font on a computer, you won't have these little clues. You won't have thick parts and thin parts because it's a computer font. If a Chinese person was writing very neatly and very nicely, and they had a kind of calligraphy brush or some kind of pen that was thinner at one end or thicker at one end, you would see these stroke clues. This little bit is a bit thicker, this little bit is a bit thicker. And it would give me a clue that if I was writing this character, this stroke would probably go, it does go, from top to bottom. And then obviously when people are writing, the handwriting sort of becomes really, really scruffy. But we're going to learn to write the characters slowly and nicely. So that means then, for the first 3 characters that you need to learn, E-R, san, you need to know how to write the strokes. The other thing that's really important about Chinese characters is you need to know where all those strokes go in space. So what we do is we imagine always that for every character we're writing it in a box. So you can Google this kind of a Chinese writing paper, and I mean that would probably bring it up. Typing in Han-zi paper would bring this kind of paper up, and often it's just a load of squares. Sometimes the square is divided like that, and sometimes, to help you even further when there's really complicated characters, the squares look like that. So you can see here we've got some squares that are just a bit more simple and they look like this. And what this will do is help us to know roughly in space where to write our characters. When we write in Chinese, we don't write onto this paper. Chinese people just use regular writing paper. This is just what children would use in school basically to learn how to actually structure the characters and get the right balance. So if you want to now have a little practice on your screen, if you have a touchscreen pen or a mouse, or on your piece of paper, or if you have a piece of scrap paper, it might help you to print out some of this, or just have a go on paper anyway, or just draw yourself some boxes. So the number 1, E, there's 1 stroke, and it goes from left to right. And what you will notice, it's not a dead straight line, is it? If you look at this paper, this grid, you'll see that this part of the stroke is slightly underneath this line, and the end part of the stroke is slightly above it. So we're just going up at a fraction of a diagonal. E, E, and that's how to write the number 1. Number 2, the strokes are written in the same way. We're writing the top stroke first. Most Chinese characters are written from top to bottom, not all. We're going, first stroke is short and it's quite high in the box. Second stroke is longer. Har, har. Have a practice at writing number 2. Har. And then number 3, san. It's really similar. We start off with a top stroke, left to right, middle, and then that bottom one is quite long. Top, middle, bottom, top, middle, bottom, top, middle, bottom. So if I was just going to write the numbers E-R, san, on paper, E-R, san, there we go, fantastic. So you can add that into your workbook. So you'll notice in the learning objectives, you need to be able to draw or write these first 3 characters. You don't need to be able to do the bottom 2. If you want to look it up for interest and extra reading, go ahead. You need to know how to write, opinion and spell all of them from 1 to 5. So let's look at characters 4 and 5. They look a bit more complicated. So number 4, again, we don't have an equivalent sound. This is my favourite number in Chinese. Si, si, si. And again, it kind of, you need to imagine that someone's kind of grabbing your throat and your throat is narrowing. So it's not si or sir, really. Si. It feels like I'm kind of being strangled a little bit when I pronounce this one. Si, si. You should feel your throat tightening. So the kind of only equivalent sound we have is kind of like the word sir, but hopefully you can hear the difference between going sir in English and si in Chinese. It's tighter. And this is a symbol for number 4. So you just kind of have to learn to recognise this one because there aren't really any clues. The 2 tricks you could use are 1, 2, 3, 4. The number 4 has a box and a box has 4 sides. This top bit looks a bit like the pi symbol. So if you know mathematically, pi is a bit more than 3, so it's the number after 3, therefore it's 4. Use whatever trick you like. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And then number 5, down here, I can see the number 5 in 5 and I've written it here. There we go, that's number 5. So you don't need to know how to write them, just recognise them. And number 5 is pronounced woo, woo. So again, we don't really have a similar pronunciation. It's a bit like if you made the noise of an owl, to wit, to woo, woo, but it's really woo, woo. So again, we're not really super emphasising the consonant, we're going woo. Let's count then from 1 to 5. So try and do it with me. 1, 2, 3, 4. Fantastic. So now you should be able to fill in your pre-sessional work table and you should be super confident to come to the session with any questions and come to practice what you've learned already. So thanks very much for watching. Can't wait to meet you in the live session. Bye for now.